Well, heck, I don't know what I'm going to call this exactly. Manifest destruction? No. You know, I was thinking the other day after I did my video on the killing of the innocents, how some people keep saying something about, well, you know, World War III is just right around the corner, or World War III, or I wonder when World War III is going to come. And the further that I pondered on it, I realized that we're already in World War III. Now let's look at it objectively here, because I don't want this to be just a subjective viewpoint, but let's look at it objectively. So if we look at the nations around the world, there isn't one place in the world that I can think of, not too many, that aren't having some kind of war right now. Now you got Libya, which just had a fracas over there, and then you got, of course we know it's just disastrous in Iraq. And then we see what's going on in Israel and Gaza, and we see what's going on in Ukraine, and we see what's going on in Africa, and every friggin' country around the world right now is involved in death and mayhem. Shooting, killing, blowing people up, severing heads, killing babies. And it's all around the world, all around the world. So if we got war that's all around the world and it involves all nations practically, or let's say at least 2/3, then that, my friends, is a world war. Okay, it doesn't necessarily have to be superpowers, but then let's look at that aspect, the superpower aspect. Let's say that the superpowers, and take for instance the United States of America, decided that they wanted to start a bunch of wars in different places. And suppose that they used one of their ABC agencies, like the CIA, which is usually the agency of choice for covert action. Let's say they chose one of those agencies and they sent people in to start wars. Now, you got to remember, wars are not like they used to be. First thing you got to remember is that it's not like World War II and people choosing off sides. They use what they call unconventional warfare tactics, and they have an unconventional warfare manual. And unconventional means unconventional. It means not like you'd normally start a war. And I think people need to understand this so that they will be more enlightened as to what's going on around the world, and that, in fact, we are in World War III. And it was started by a superpower, maybe in collusion with other superpowers as a plan. Now, I'll take an example of, let's start with Libya, because that's more recent, and Iraq, where they threw both of them out, hung them. Okay, Saddam got hung, and Muammar Gaddafi got assassinated after they destabilized the country. I'm talking about the unconventional warfare people, the CIA, the covert black ops people, black operations, hidden. So what they do is they'll do just like they did a long time ago when we got the Russians out of Afghanistan. The CIA funded the Mujahideen and the Taliban, or which later became the Taliban, and Osama bin Laden with Stinger missiles. The CIA went in there, told them how to use the Stinger missiles and how to shoot them at the Russian troops, how to shoot down their helicopters. So this ragtag army of tribal people defeated the Russians. Well, let's put it this way, the Russians moved out. So that's what the CIA does. They go in and they hit a tribal faction, and then they fund them and they give them money and arms. So this is what they did to destabilize Libya. Of course, there was a direct onslaught in Iraq. So they used both methods, the conventional and unconventional. But they used the unconventional a lot, and they did in Libya, and they did now in Syria when they accused Assad recently of having, shooting off a chemical attack. That proved to be false, just like their allegations of Saddam Hussein having weapons of mass destruction and biological weapons, and Powell went in and held up this little vial, probably had baby powder in it. Who knows? Maybe it had some cocaine and he sniffed it up his nostril. Who knows? But they trump up evidence, and then they go in on this trumped up evidence that they go in before the UN, the trumped up UN, to get permission, which they've already paid off people to give them permission, or they just go against the UN. UN doesn't really mean anything, UN means nothing, You could say ultimately nothing, UN, ultimately nothing. No power whatsoever. I mean, hell, they just blew up a UN, or Israelis just blew up a UN school in Gaza. Did they do anything about it? I don't think so. But back to the point, they go in, they destabilize countries by sending they'll send a group of CIA or spec ops people in there, and then they'll make the rounds, and what they'll do is they'll infiltrate different factions, and they will stir the factions up, and these people might not even know that that's a CIA agent in with them. But they will stir these factions up, like, say, they stirred the supposedly quote-unquote Free Syrian Army. They stirred that faction up against Assad to overthrow Assad. And then when the 100,000 people, 100,000, maybe close to 200,000 people got killed, men, women, children, Christians, whatever, and they found out that the going was slow trying to overthrow him, that's when they introduced this lie about, oh, he's got weapons he shot off a chemical attack when he didn't. It was proven later he didn't. So they armed these Syrian rebels, okay? The United States even admitted to arming them. They're rebels, they're freedom fighters, we're overthrowing a dictator, Assad. What happened is, in the process of doing this, Russia intervened. And they came in and said, hey, something ain't right here in Denmark, because the U.S. was pulling their ships in with Tomahawk and cruise missiles, getting ready to just fire them into Syria just like they did Iraq. And Putin stopped it. He brokered a deal and had Assad supposedly turn over all his chemical weapons, and behind the scenes, the intel says that he actually physically stopped the cruise missiles. He might have shot some down that came in off the ships. Well, guess what? America didn't like that very much. Now, this is just a couple of countries. Okay, so we got Libya, and we got places in Somalia, and we got places in Yemen, and we got places around the world where We do this very same thing over and over and over again. We make it look like the bad guys who we've been in bed with are good guys, when they're Taliban and they're factions of what we call terrorists. We're the terrorists. The people that do this kind of thing, that propagate murder of the innocents and other people, are the terrorists, not the ones they're hiring. It's the ones that are doing the hiring. Now you can find that this is done all over the world, okay? This is really going to be an informative video if you listen to it and review it. And if you miss something, rewind it, and please share it with your friends, because this is the truth that I'm speaking here, as far as I know it, and I'm not somebody that doesn't do research. I have my own intelligence sources. So anyway, we got the destabilization, we got the war. I started off where we're in World War III. Well, that's how I'm saying that one superpower is doing all of these things. The West is trying to destabilize all these different Middle Eastern countries. And it's been everywhere. People, Turkey, Chechnya, now it's in Ukraine. And what they do, and see, I had to explain this to a person, is like when at Kiev, what happened there is that they sent in goons or CIA guys to recruit goons to overthrow the government that was in there, because they realized that people were a little bit unhappy, just like people get unhappy. So they used that as an advantage. And they knew that this person that was in there was friends with Putin. So what they did is they caused a coup, and they had Nazis come in and all kinds of factions come in and throw the guy out. And they beat up people in radio stations. They did all kinds of things, burned people, threw bombs, threatened people, killed people at gunpoint. And this was done by the West. This is done by our country that funded these people, CIA, Black Ops. So what happened was Kiev, which is the capital of Ukraine, or southern Ukraine, or part of Ukraine, it's a big part of Ukraine, Kiev, was destabilized, and a puppet was put in the place of the one that was close to Putin. The Americans put in their puppet. Now it's Poroshenko, the chocolate king. So they put their puppet in, and he immediately started realizing that, okay, now I left one thing out. This is when Crimea saw that there was a big destabilization going on, and most of Crimea is Russian, and also the port at Crimea is the Russian Black Sea port, has been for a long time, and they got to deal with Crimea to be in there for 40 years and have 25,000 troops, up to 40,000 troops. So the people in Crimea are leaning heavily Russian, and they voted, hey, you know what? We're seeing destabilization in Kiev, and we want to vote as a entity here, or a state within this Ukrainian states. We want to vote to secede and go back to Russia, because originally they were Russian anyway. And so they had a fair vote, and they seceded, just like Texas would have say, I'm going to secede from the United States, and everybody votes and says okay, and they secede. Well, America twisted that all around. They twisted that all around and said, Russia invaded Crimea. He didn't invade Crimea, you dumb idiots. And when I say dumb idiots, I'm not talking to my audience. I'm talking to the general people that think that, because of the prostitute media of Western press putting out that info. Oh, Russia went in and invaded Crimea. They didn't know such thing. Crimea left on their own. So that's what all this Malaysian airliner and all this stuff, started over it. Okay? Because the people in Kiev, being the puppets that they are, decided that since eastern Ukraine is mostly Russia speaking, they started persecuting and outlawing they outlawed the language of Russia, and everybody speaks Russian. And they started killing people and attacking them. And these are Russian people, most of them, a lot of them. Russian and Ukrainian are not too different as far as where their roots come from. They both rode reindeer, whatever. And Putin's right on the border, and he's watching all this, and he's watching people that call themselves Russian being tortured and set upon by the people in Kiev who, back again, were set up by the West. That's why the West wants to blame Russia for the Malaysian airliner and this and that. Now do you get it? It's one big lie. That's what's happening. Now, if you need to rewind this and listen about the chain of events that caused this, which I just said, so we're in World War III here, and it was caused by the West. And it seems like the West and the East have done whoop, they've done a polar switch, almost like a magnetic pole shift, and the good guys are the Russians and the bad guys are our country. We're like Nazis here, police friggin' state. And Putin's the one that's been like, okay, I mean, let's try to settle this diplomatically. He said over and over again, I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll work with you, blah, blah, blah. He stood firm. He's not a panty waist. He's an ex-KGB man. But he's trying to work with the West and trying to integrate. And meanwhile, they're doing all this sanction stuff, which means nothing except that it's causing some businesses in the EU, the European Union, which makes up all of Europe and Germany and France, and NATO, which was organized back during the end of World War II and was a completely different type of organization. It's obvious that we're in World War III. Now, if that wasn't bad enough that all this stuff is going out front, right, where we can see it, then behind the scenes we got all this, we got a World War III of finances, which runs everything, runs the whole friggin' world. That's why we're seeing unrest and destabilization, because they're fighting for resources. And it's about the petrodollar and the ruble and the yuan, which is, the ruble is Russian and the yuan is Chinese. I know this all seems rather foreign to you probably, but it's really simple. The world's reserve currency is the dollar, and it's worth nothing anymore since we went off the gold standard, and that happened with Nixon. So it's worth nothing, and if you look at a graph, it's been going down, 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 way down. And so in order to make people give them the illusion that our economy's okay, which it isn't, they put out phony numbers. They actually lie, because people have double-checked them on this. They put out phony numbers about employment, phony numbers about the GDP, phony numbers about this, phony numbers about the Dow. The Dow's way up, shouldn't be. It's inflated. There's all these bubbles that are about ready to pop, like in 2008, the housing bubble and this bubble and that bubble. We're broke. And other countries own our treasury bonds, like China. We've sold them treasury bonds, which is like having stock in America, and they're worthless. And we're printing over 85 billion, the Federal Reserve, which is not a government agency, a private agency. Everybody thinks it's a government agency. Is printing 85 billion or more just to prop up these banks that went south 2008 when everything crashed and never recovered. So that's the financial situation. We got the financial World War III going on. And as a manifestation of all the unrest, we've got all, and it's about the thing I said the other day, greed, money, and power, and resources. It's like when they had the gold rush and everybody went crazy. But I got news for you. They're fracking and doing all this shale mining. There are no resources. They're struggling hard to find oil and all this stuff because it's running out, people. And we got droughts in 2/3 part of the United States. Water is dwindling. It's like the world's perfect storm. I've talked about this before. I'll probably name this video World War III's already here. It is. It's here on a financial level. Now, how long the war is going to last and how intense it's going to get remains to be seen. But it's here already. People are thinking, when's it going to come? When's this? It's here. Just because you don't live in a country where you're seeing babies blown up into bits and butchered and all this stuff, and people aren't breaking in your door and raping you and doing this, doesn't mean it ain't happening around the world. It's happening all over the world. People losing money in bank accounts, the government's raiding their bank accounts and doing all this stuff because they're broke. Everybody's broke. I got news for you. That's why if you look at it, people like China and Russia are buying up all the gold. Real gold to back their currency so they can try to do a reset or start over or switch or something because they realize what's going on. So how long do you think this is going to last, people? I'd love to hear your comments on it. It ain't going to last long, I'll tell you that right now. And so I just ran down the whole deal. Okay, with this superpower of the United States destabilizing all these nations and Russia coming in and trying to catch them like, in a net to save them. Why Russia's doing this, I don't know. But maybe the Russian people aren't as bad as everybody makes them out to be because they were our allies in World War II. And if it wasn't for the Russians, we would have lost World War II. Because the siege at Leningrad was horrific. And they stood off the Germans. And so if they hadn't done that, and if they hadn't done some other things regarding the Germans, everything would be Nazi today. Which brings up another point. When the war was over, in Operation Paperclip, the United States brought all the Nazis in here, Werner von Braun on the project for rockets and all these scientists, and a lot of people that were war criminals started popping up in the United States and getting asylum. So we made a deal. And then we became enemies of the Russians. Well, gee, I wonder why. Because we took all the Nazis in, and Russians hate Nazis. So we're Nazis. Basically, the U.S. Sure, we got a flag flying up there, and the Constitution is no more. It's no more. That was all planned. This is not a conspiracy theory, Operation Paperclip, and all the stuff I'm talking about. You can look it up. Google Operation Paperclip if you don't believe me. So this is what's happening around the world. It's shifted to the West. I don't give credence to any nation or borders or any of that stuff. To me, Great Spirit says the land isn't to be owned. And the Bible says everybody shall sit under their own vine and fig tree, which means we should be farming and living off the land, not slaving for some asshole, okay? Or some government agency being on our ass about taxes and stuff. Or stealing our houses on mortgage or whatever. This is all not should be. We should be living off the land free. No problem. They're the ones that did this. They boxed everybody in. So we're in World War III, and we're in on a financial and other level, and it's just intensifying because the resources are running out. What do you think's going to happen? When resources start running out, if you've ever read anything on the fall of civilizations, and there's an excellent book by Jared Diamond on this, 3 things cause the fall: lack of resources, wars, and not getting along with other nations, having trade fall. That's exactly what's happening right now, only it's worldwide. It's not just one little civilization. The whole world is a civilization now because of technology and everything, and we're all hooked up through the different reserve banks. You know, like the feds of every country are all hooked together. It's a big monopoly. It's like a monopoly board. Get it? It's like a chessboard, like I was saying before. People need to understand how all this stuff works and what's going on so that they can realize the gravity of the situation. This is what's happening. And these people that are doing this, the West, are in collusion with other countries in Europe. Now, it could be that this cabal, or these group of people that think that they're running everything, have a plan. But that doesn't mean their plan's going to work. And that doesn't mean that their plan won't go awry, because if Putin is not in with the plan, or China, which I strongly suspect they aren't, because they don't want to be controlled by anybody. They don't want to be a one world government. They're a prouder people than that. They got culture. The U.S. doesn't have any culture, except the Native American who they killed. Do you get it? I hope so. This is stuff that has to be made known, and they won't let reporters report on this, or they won't let the truth come out. When a whistleblower comes out like Snowden or whoever, they'd kill him. Assange is still in custody, not custody, he's staying at the Ecuadorian embassy, and they can't get out because the London people will kill him. The UK will kill him if he ever comes out. And they tried to trump up sex charges against him to get him out. He's the guy that exposed the WikiLeaks guy. So anybody that exposes anything is automatically put on a death list or a hit list, or look what happened to Bradley Manning. People, you need to wake up here. You need to be like the dog soldier, the Cheyenne dog soldier, or the Apache, and fight to the death for your children and grandchildren if you have to. Are you going to be like the Jews were in World War II and just get shuffled off to the ovens? Is that what's going to happen? And a lot of people go, oh, that's not happening. Bullshit. It's happening. History repeats itself. And it doesn't necessarily repeat itself in the same country that it pops up in other countries. Fascism and death squads and Nazism. Nazism is just a word for a police state. And we have a police state here in America. I got news for you. It's here. There's roadblocks everywhere. You can't go anywhere without canine dogs and all kinds of shit being seen to put fear into you. Oh, gee, I wonder, am I carrying anything that the dogs can sniff? A gun, some marijuana, whatever. Or how about my prescription drugs? Will they smell those? Why does everybody have to walk around in fear that they're going to look in your suitcase and your personal effects? The founding fathers said that's the Fourth Amendment. They don't have the right to do it, and they just blew that right out the window. They blew it out the window. First Amendment rights, freedom of speech. Second Amendment rights, well, we still got guns. But we might not have any ammo for them like they did to the Indians. So this is what's happening around the world. We are in World War III. And it's a financial war, and it's a shooting war, because look at all the people that are being killed. Just because you're not standing in Ukraine and seeing people's legs blown off, men, women, and children. I've seen horrific videos that were underground videos that weren't, I mean, if you ever saw them, well, actually, some of them were on YouTube. But these crazy MFers over in Kiev that are supported by the CIA that are going and killing the Russian people and bombing them and stuff, well, no wonder a plane got shot down, accidentally or otherwise. Who cares? This was all started by the cabal, or whoever the West is, whatever's going on with that shit. It's intense, people, I know. But I feel like if I just stood here, you know, I talked to a young guy today at a coffee shop. He knew about 2/3 of this stuff, but he didn't know, or half of it. Some people are waking up. They realize it. So it means if they're realizing it and they're just the normal person on the street, then you're not crazy. You're not a conspiracy theorist. You know how they realize it? When they go to the store and the ground beef and all that is like way up. Shows you we're in a depression, inflation, whatever. And that all this hunky-dory stuff on the stock market is all BS. We're in Third World War, people. Now, how long it's going to last and how it's going to get worse before it gets better. Okay? It's going to get much, much worse because it's ramping up. It's ramping up. So you need to ramp up your consciousness and get a clue and realize what's going on here, and not just go, oh, thunder's just spouting off again. Thunder's like a dog soldier sitting here trying to warn his people. And his people meaning we are all one. We're all connected. The white man, the brown man, the black man, the yellow man. We're all connected. And we're connected with Mother Earth and the cosmos. But all that stuff is I had a vision of how we're all connected with the cosmos, but then I saw destruction. I saw twisted metal, okay? And people crying and moaning and wailing. I get visions, and they're real. And you don't even need to have a vision. You can just look around and some of the different, but I got visions of it getting worse. So you can either listen to me, take what I say into account, or you can just blow it off. And it doesn't matter to me whether you blow it off or not, because I've done my job. And my job is to inform my fellow man and have compassion and love for my fellow man, not by scaring him. I'm not doing this to scare people. You got to get over that fear bullshit. You got to get over it. You just got to get over the fear. Once you look at death in the square in the face and say, well, that's the worst thing that could happen to me, what's to fear? Well, there's things worse than death, people. Incarceration and sickness and people you know, spreading chemtrails across the sky and destroying Mother Earth and no water. That's worse. When you're dead, you're gone, you don't know nothing. So think about what comes before and what your grandchildren might have to live through. Okay, I'm going to end it there. I'm going to make a plea right now for Campfire Council, which propagates this kind of stuff, disseminates it, tells people how to survive off nature, unbrainwashes them, fills them in on the facts, tries to stick to sacred tradition. Okay, going back to the roots, sacred tradition. So we could use your donations. We have funds, but you know, funds get lower and lower. We could use some more donations, and we could use people out there that are really wanting to band together and join up with something here, because the shit is going to hit the fan. So something will pop up here, or the links will be down below in the About This Video section. Just click on that and read it and look at it. And go to the Campfire Council link website and donate. We need it. Or you're volunteer, join up, sign the newsletter, do whatever you got to do. Okay, people, I'm out of here. I thought I'd just get that out here, and hopefully, you know, you'll pass this video on and act on it. Peace unto you all, and I'm out of here.